Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. We start in the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful. All praise is due to God, the Lord of the worlds. And may peace and blessings of God be upon His Prophet Muhammad, his family and companions. Students, faculty, friends and colleagues, I greet you all with Islamic greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Today is the second of a week-long series of events as part of our very first anti-oppression week, and the focus of today's events is oppressive Middle Eastern dictators. Before we begin today's event, we will begin with some verses from the Muslim holy book, the Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين إن يكن غنيا أو فقيرا فالله أولى بهما فلا تتبعوا الهوى أن تعدلوا وإن تلوا أو تعرضوا فإن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا صدق الله العلي العظيم. Translation, inshallah. O you who have believed, be persistently standing firm in justice, witnesses for Allah, even if it be against yourselves or parents and relatives. Whether one is rich or poor, Allah is more worthy of both. So follow not personal inclination, lest you not be just. And if you distort your testimony or refuse to give it, then indeed Allah is ever knowledgeable of what you do. Thank you.
Hi. What are you doing today?
We have with us today Mr. Hussam Ayloush, the Executive Director of CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations of the Greater Los Angeles area. He will be speaking about dictators with oppressive rules in the Middle East. As Muslims, we have a duty to speak out against injustice anywhere we see it, especially when it comes from within our own community. So without any further ado, Hussam Ayloush.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, and may the peace and the blessings of Allah be upon His Messenger Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, and his family and his companions and all the followers and all prophets and their followers. It's always a great pleasure to be on campus. Try to feel younger, so at least that's the least benefit for me. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for asking me to speak on a topic that is of great importance to all of us as students, as activists, as Muslims, as human beings. I personally didn't know I would be in the outdoor, so that's great. We'll be enjoying the sun and the outdoors. I'm not a screamer, or it's not going to be loud. Nothing to excite you into any protest or anything. So just sit down and enjoy the hopefully an intellectual discussion. And I would hope to hear from you also. This is I'll try my best to finish early on to allow for comments, questions and answers. A topic I think is extremely important because it hits on many factors, many issues dealing with our faith as Muslims, as believers, but also in our credibility. It touches and it deals with our credibility. If we cannot criticize injustice claimed in our name or done by people who affiliate with us, whether it's our government, whether it's fellow Muslims, whether it's fellow Americans, and so on and so forth, then we have no right to criticize anyone else, truly. So I'm very, very thankful and very glad that the MSU chose a topic like this. So when we say the oppressive Middle Eastern dictators, who are we talking about? Well, we're probably, I think, you had in mind the leaders of Middle East countries, but not to make anyone feel left out, that could include South Asia also and other countries and African countries. So we don't want anyone to feel left out here. It's equal opportunity criticism. How do you identify these countries? And this is not, actually, it's an important question, because once in a while I hear someone saying, well, is there a problem between Islam and democracy? Because we keep looking at some of these Muslim countries and all we see is oppression and dictatorships. And the quick answer is, of course, not. If anything, actually, Islam calls for free will, for free choice for people, for a system that would be equivalent to what we call modern-day democracy. The free will of people to choose who rules them and how they rule themselves. So that is an important element to make. And actually, if you look at just the geography and the politics, most Muslims live actually under the democratic rules in one way or the other. Whether you look at Indonesia, the largest country with Muslim population, whether you look in Bangladesh, whether you look even in Pakistan with all the human rights violations that exist, but still there's an operational, a working democracy, whether you look at Turkey, and so on and so forth. So the actually majority of Muslims live under democratic systems. But nevertheless, there are a lot of undemocratic systems that exist where people suffer under their rules, whether these people are Muslim or otherwise. So some of the signs that identify, I know it's going to sound like a boring political science class, so I do apologize. It's not a good for outdoor topic, but some of the signs that will identify these countries. One, usually, of course, the obvious thing is the autocratic, dictatorial system, the way things operate, who decides, who gets to be chosen to be the leader or members of the parliament and so on. The lack of true democracy, meaning the will of the people is not important. People are not asked their opinion, and if they're asked, it's usually symbolically. You would hear about a president winning elections with 99.9%. Basically everyone except their mother maybe voted for them. And you see countries like Egypt, and maybe I don't want to start, because if I start, some people will feel really left out. But some of these countries, Tunisia, until recently, Algeria maybe, you look, some countries don't even bother to have elections. Why go through this facade? Some countries in the Gulf areas, for example. You look at the lack of human rights. Basic human rights, the basic human rights do not exist. Basic freedoms, that we take so much for granted in our country here, wouldn't exist. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, the due process, being safe from being arrested, detained, without charges, having the right to defend yourself, that doesn't exist in many of those countries. Another sign is the personality cult that surrounds the leaders. So that's another sign you would know. Everywhere you would drive in that country, you will see a nice, big, huge statue of that person, as big as the Sphinx of Egypt, for example. You go and you see the pictures of that leader everywhere. It is almost to the point of worshipping that person. It's almost to the point where if you criticize that leader, you're almost violating some religious, moral ethic. Other signs could be the use of torture, detention, we talked about it. The military court that exists for political issues, people will be tried in military court. You'll hear me mentioning a lot of different countries, but it's not to pick on any one specific country. Whether it's Libya, where the leader has been there for God knows